Hello students, this is Anita Goswami, Assistant Professor in English, Government College Rajkachuru. Our, today, our today's topic is a poem, Tears, Idle Tears, written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. This poem is prescribed in BA Part 2nd, Paper 1st of English Literature in MGS University, Bikaner. So, students, before going to the text, I would like to give a brief intro of the poet of this poem, who is Alfred Lord Tennyson. He was born in 1809 and died in 1892. Tennyson was the poet laureate of Great Britain and Ireland during Queen Victoria's reign. He received his university education from Cambridge. He is considered to be a representative Victorian poet, as his poems reflect the different intellectual currents prevalent at that time. His poetry is remarkable for its musical and pictorial qualities. Even in his earliest poems, we can note his extraordinary eye for beauty. Like a true artist, he creates pictures with his use of words. So, he is renowned basically for the long elegy which he wrote on the death of his dear friend Arthur Hallam. The title of the work is In Memoriam, which was written in 1850. And his other renowned work is Idylls of the King, which is about the revival of the stories of King Arthur and his knights, and it was written in 1859. His other well-known works are like Curdon, The Princess Maud, Ulysses, Lotus Eaters, Tithonus, etc. So now coming to the poem, here this poem, Tears, Idle Tears, is basically a lyric poem, and it was originally embedded in his 1847 narrative poem The Princess, where it is sung by a court maiden. So here Princess Ida, who commands her maids to sing a song to pass the time as they take a break from their regular studies. The poem is an emotionally intense meditation on the passing of time and the loss of friends and loved ones. This subject matter might be partly explained by the fact that Tennyson wrote this poem after a visit to the destitute Tintern Abbey near the grave of his dear friend Arthur Hallam. And the whole poem consists of 4 stanzas of 5 lines each, written in blank verse. So now coming to the text of this poem. Okay, here the first stanza of this poem is like this: Tears, idle tears, I know not what they mean. Tears from the depth of some divine despair rise in the heart and gather to the eyes in looking on the happy autumn fields and thinking of the days that are no more. So students, here from the very beginning of line of this poem, the situation is like this: somebody is crying and crying, but he doesn't know why he is crying. So here the speaker, the maiden, maybe he or she, we are not sure who is the speaker of this poem, as we got a little introduction about it, that there is a maid of Princess Ida who sing this song. So we can consider that here the speaker is a lady. So here, tears, idle tears, I know not what they mean. So here the tears seem to come from a deep sadness, which feels at the same time like it's something heavenly. How heavenly? Because in the second line, the speaker is saying tears from the depth of some divine despair. So here the phrase divine despair suggests that the tears has some kind of heavenly quality. So this sadness begins in the heart before making its way to the eyes, as the speaker look at the happy sight of these autumn fields and think about the past. So in the next fourth line, speaker is saying that he is looking on the happy autumn fields, and then after looking the beauty of autumn fields, some kind of feelings arising in his heart, and that feeling also gathers to his or her eyes. So here the speaker wonders at the source of her divine despair, a deep but vague sadness brought about by looking at the autumn landscape and thinking about her past. So her tears are idle. So this word idle meaning that without a clear purpose or cause. So here tears are idle, but also linked throughout the poem to the death of friends or the memory of past love and changes his nature also. With the lack of specific details such as the name of friends or lovers, we are not sure, and here no name is given. So however, this makes the poem a more general meditation on the bittersweet nature of memory, focused on the grief that arises when considering all that has been lost to the passage of time. So the poem doesn't seek to explain this grief, instead focusing on the poignant contrast of recalling happy days, which nonetheless makes the speaker sad because they are no more. So here in the fifth line of first stanza, there is the line, and thinking of the days that are no more. So the poem clearly connects here the speaker's divine despair to a consideration of the nature of memory. Here, one thing the speaker repeatedly repeats or returns to the refrain. Here, refrain is used in the fifth line of this first stanza, the days that are no more. Again and again, the speaker is repeating the same sentence. The poet uses the same sentence in each and every stanza. So here we find refrain. So the speaker is also notably looking on the happy autumn fields. Autumn is a season associated with change, as the abundance of summer wanes and the metaphorical death of winter approaches. The fact that these fields are happy, meanwhile, also complicates the speaker's grief by underscoring the ability of memory to make people both joyful and sad at once. So here we find a kind of a contrasting, contradictory thing, that throughout the poem the sense of contradiction extends, as the speaker's tears become not simply sad but also strange. So this strangeness refers to the poignancy of the speaker's grief, that grief which that it arises from thinking about past happy things. So here in the phrase divine despair, the literary device oxymoron is used, and this oxymoron, divine despair, further hints at the paradoxical nature of memory. Usually the word divine describes things that are positive, that are godlike, whereas despair suggests a complete loss of hope. The combination of two words with such opposite meanings demonstrates just how conflicted and confused, how strange the speaker's emotions are. So now with this we shall move towards our next stanza, that means the second stanza of this poem. Here we are. Fresh as the text beam glittering on a sail that brings our friends up from the underworld, sad as the last which reddens over one that sinks with all we love below the words, so sad, so fresh, the days that are no more. So here, students, as I have earlier mentioned, that this phrase, the days that are no more, this particular refrain is used by the poet again and again in each and every at the end of each and every stanza. So here in the second stanza of this poem, these tears, the nature of tears is explained or exposed to the readers, that these tears are as invigorating as the first sunbeam hitting the sail of a ship that carries our dead friends back up from the underworld. But these tears are also as sad as the last sunbeam reflecting off the sail of another ship which carries everyone we love away over the horizon. So it's so sad but also so invigorating to think about the past. So here the speaker repeatedly returns to the idea, noting how her tears are both as fresh as the first sunbeam hitting the ship that brings her friends from the underworld, and as sad as the last sunset which falls on another ship taking all we love down to the underworld. So her grief then is linked both to the new life and to death, to beginnings and to endings. It is again inextricable from a consideration of the passage of time. So here again, now we will move towards the third stanza of this poem. Ah, sad and strange as in dark summer dance, the earliest pipe of half awakened birds to dying ears, when unto dying eyes the casement slowly grows a glimmering square. So here tears, the nature of tears, actually it as sad and as strange as a dark summer morning when the first birds, still just half awake themselves, begin singing their song for someone who is on their deathbed. So here the speaker is saying that the feelings, the memories of past life are as sad and strange as a dark summer morning when the first birds begin singing a kind of song, and for someone who is near on his own deathbed. Here the phrase is using to the dying ears and dying eyes. So these phrases suggest that someone who is near on his deathbed and who can see the rising sunlight slowly filter through a window. The casement here means the window. So it's so sad but also so strange to think about the past, that somebody so here again the speaker echoes the idea when she connects her tears to darker summer dance. Dance means morning time. So the speaker is connecting her tears to dark summer dance, during which early bird song is heard by dying ears. When the song of bird is heard by someone who is approaching to his own death, who is going to die. So birds typically represent renewal and new life, but here are associated with death also. So here the speaker is actually the feelings of speaker expresses the confused state of his mind. And with this we will move towards our end of this poem, the fourth stanza, which is also the end or last stanza of this poem, where the speaker is saying, here we are: dear as remembered kisses after death, and sweet as those by hopeless fancy faint, on lips that are for others deep as love, deep as first love, and wild with old regret, O death in life, the days that are no more. So here the speaker is saying that these tears are as rare and a kind of something rarest thing, as rare and treasured as the memory of a dead lover's kisses, and they are as sweet as the kisses pictured by a hopeless imagination. Hopeless because these imaginary kisses are with someone already romantically tied to somebody else. So these tears are as deep as love itself, especially what kind of love? The first love, and utterly consumed with regret. The poet, the speaker, is regretting here that he is missing someone's love, somebody who is very close to his or her heart. Or it's like bringing the dead to life again to think about the past time. So here the speaker is using a phrase, death in life. So the confused state of the speaker's mind is suggested here in the last stanza. We find that the confused state of speaker's mind actually demonstrates the paradoxical power of memory, which is used to revive temporarily that which has been irretrievably lost. So in other words, thinking about happy memories makes the speaker sad, because doing so is also a reminder of things that are over. The poem's closing refrain that then declares that everything in the past is a form of a death in life. So this final paradox can be interpreted in two ways. On the one hand, the past is as lost as the dead. On the other, death is contained in life. So death in life, meaning that just like sunrise enlightens the night, memory can be used to enlighten the past. This gives the poem a bittersweet conclusion that the past is granted fresh life in the speaker's mind through her or his memories, yet those memories themselves are a reminder that the past is no more. The past which cannot be retrievable, that is something finished, something has lost, and which cannot be revived, which cannot be gained, or which cannot be fulfilled again. So here all over the poem we find a kind of generalization, a kind of intense meditation of general things which happen in ordinary human beings' life, that there is a time which the changing nature of human life which keeps on going, and nobody can change his or her circumstances. Nobody can claim here near and dear ones to be present with him or her again in his life. Nobody can claim to enjoy the same beauty of past life, the same beautiful days or happiest moments of his past life again. So here with this we have come to the conclusion of this poem. So students, I hope you have understood the poem, and we thank you for this. we will meet again our next class. And so I hope this is enough for now. Thank you.